Welcome back to Hardball. For months now, Donald Trump has called on his supporters to watch polling locations for what he alleges could be widespread voter fraud in the big cities. Now, civil rights advocates say they're worried that voter intimidation spurred by Trump's claims the election is rigged could be on the rise this November. This comes in the wake of the 2013 Supreme Court ruling that cut portions of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which were aimed at preventing discrimination at the ballot box. As the New York Times notes, for the first time since the days of poll taxes and literacy tests a half-century ago, the Justice Department will be sharply restricted in how it can deploy some of its most powerful weapons to deter voter intimidation in the presidential election. That means fewer voter election observers can be deployed to monitor polling locations. At the same time, Trump is stoking fears of a rigged election, but he said actually on Saturday that voter fraud could actually help him if fraudulent ballots are cast for him.
There are 2.8 million people that are registered in more than one state. So we'll vote here. Let's ride down the road. Let's vote next one. Maybe they'll vote for Trump. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this. I may be hurting myself. You're right. You're right. Maybe they're going to vote for Trump. All right. Let's forget that. It's okay for them to do it.
Well, I'm joined right now by Judith Browne Dianis of the Advancement Project and Heather McGee of Demos. Let me ask you, Judith, first of all, let's talk specifically about what Trump is saying. He's basically saying keep an eye out for the big city, urban cities with large minority populations. And if you're from somewhere else, basically get in your car on election day as a private citizen, drive into some neighborhood where you think there might be voting cheating of some kind, impersonation, whatever, and blow the whistle on it. Is that feasible? Can we imagine that actually happening? And if so, what would be the impact? If, say, somebody from a suburb goes into a black community, a minority community, and starts blowing the whistle. Because in Philadelphia, there were 59 voting divisions where you didn't get a single vote for Mitt Romney. And I believe because nobody voted for Mitt Romney. But they may have different suspicions. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, first, let's be clear about this, Chris. There's clearly racism behind this. From, first of all, saying that there's the boogeyman of voter fraud. And by the way, my supporters, that boogeyman are, those are black and Latino people in the inner cities. And then dispatching people and telling supporters to go to those areas and watch what they are doing. First, we should know that intimidation is against the law under the Voting Rights Act. So getting in the way of anyone exercising that right to vote is illegal. Two is that in most places and in most states, there's actually about who can go into the polling places. And it's exactly why the Department of Justice is not going to have observers inside because...
Okay, let's talk about the Trump people. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I really want to get the focus on where Trump is and show whether it's possible, even relevant to the universe we live in. Some guy or woman comes in from the burbs, for example, a Republican comes in, or a pro-Trumpy, comes in and shows up in an inner city voting area. They walk up, they got their head over the shoulder looking at the voting list, so they just stick their face into it, and they say, that's not Mary McGee, that's not her, that's not that person. Now, is that what they're talking about, stopping in person? I'm just trying to figure out physically what's Trump talking about?
Well, I mean, what he's really talking about is intimidating them just by showing up.
Do you think that would intimidate somebody in a tough downtown district where, people all know each other, they know the community, they use the term community to know who's in it and who isn't in it, and somebody who shows up who's not in the community and starts giving orders, do you think that would intimidate anybody? I think that person would be shouted down probably.
No, I do think that they will be shouted down, and I don't think they actually will be able to challenge a voter. But what I do think it is that, you have some of his supporters who have said, we're going to racially profile. There was a guy who said, we're going to racially profile people, make them a little nervous. And
how do you do that?
Well, I mean, I think it's by some people who are going to show up and hope that they can intimidate people just by their very existence at a polling place. I actually don't think that voters are going to be intimidated. People want to cast a ballot.
That's what I think
that these folks are going to be shut down at the polling place, and that there will be observers who will be there to challenge those challengers.
But here's what they can do.
Go ahead, Heather.
Here's what they can do is actually they can slow things down. I mean, we saw this a few elections ago in Pennsylvania because the laws about whether or not a non-official, non-registered person can go up to line and say, challenge their validity, and then have the onus be on the voter to provide ID, to provide an affidavit from someone in the community who knows them. It's really actually a patchwork of laws, as is the case across our country. And in some places like Pennsylvania, the laws are really, really weak. And so what you can get there is that people, and this is not new to Donald Trump, there's an organization called True the Vote that did this in 2012 and has been training sort of vigilante poll watchers. And what it can do is slow it down so that you have those lines, because what they're doing is making someone then prove more than they would have had to do otherwise. And that's part of the problem.
But in states like Pennsylvania, you have to, first of all, you have to register to be an observer to go into the polling place. And you have to either be with a party or be with a candidate. So it's not going to be as easy as he's making it out to be to go into a polling place and challenge voters.
Well,
and in fact, in most places, you also have to have some evidence.
We have to tell everybody voting, if you're an honest voter, and you are watching this show, I can tell you're an honest voter, vote. Don't let anybody get in the way. But I don't think these vigilantes from the burbs are going to be any problem to anybody who wants to vote in their community.
The problem is
I just really believe those people will be tough enough. They've fought enough in their lives, and their parents have, to get the vote. They're not going to let somebody come in and say, excuse me, and get in their face. I don't think so. Your thoughts? You're the experts.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the real problem here is that this is not just an outlier candidate like Donald Trump, who has gone beyond the bounds of so many of our norms, but this is actually a pattern of voter intimidation and suppression that takes a lot of different forms. Demos just won a lawsuit where we sued the state of Ohio for kicking registered eligible voters off the voter rolls because they hadn't voted recently, right? So these are the kinds of things. Obviously, we know about the North Carolina lawsuit that won triumphantly, saying that legislators there had gone with surgical precision to find out what types of voting laws African Americans used and tried to cut those out. This is this is everyone, and this is part of an ethos that says that we're not all equal citizens.
And we're going to keep reporting on that because souls to the polls is a legitimate way to vote. It's a nice way to vote. It's godly. Let's keep it up. Anyway, Judith Browne Dianis.